Hello, everyone. I am Anna Brown with Living Joyfully, and we are so glad you have joined us for this episode of the Exploring Unschooling podcast. I am joined by my co-host, Pamela Riccia and Erica Ellis. Welcome to you both.
Hi.
I wanted to mention one of the new focus courses we have available at the Living Joyfully shop. It's called Navigating Family Gatherings. It's kind of a timely topic for this season for many of us. And we will continue to be adding things to the shop. So we just love it if you could pop in there periodically and see what's new and share it. You can follow the link in the show notes, or you can go to livingjoyfullyshop.com. But before we get started, we wanted to remind everyone that with this Unschooling Rules series, we use the word rules in quotes to draw attention to the fact that there no such thing as a rule, not when it comes to unschooling for sure. It can feel easier to reach for that set of rules to follow, especially when we're learning something new. But we want to offer you the space to look within, to find what makes sense to you and what makes sense to the individual members of your family. There are no unschooling police. Nobody is going to drop by your house and give you a failing grade or the A+. Our goal with this series is to explore these apparent rules that are floating around and cultivate an environment for self-discovery, inquiry, agency, and growth. And we're going to change up our format a bit and just have an open discussion about the topic area. And I think it's going to be a lively, fun conversation because we're going to be talking about food. Erica, do you want to get us started?
Okay, so I'm excited. We decided to call this episode Unschooling Rules About Food because I don't think there is even one particular food rule that comes to mind when we think of unschooling, but there are a lot of beliefs, fears, misconceptions that people have, and it is a topic that people are asking about all the time. And so I thought we could start out with sharing what some of those beliefs are. And so I'll just list off a couple and then we'll go from there. So here's a few that I've heard over the years. The first one goes, if kids can eat whatever they choose, they'll only eat ice cream. Or fill in the blank, whatever the thing is that feels the scariest. Kids cannot be trusted to know what their bodies need. We as adults need to pass along what we've learned to them so that they could be healthier than we were when we were kids. Kids should eat how we've learned works well for us to eat. And also that unschoolers must just not care much about physical health. If they're letting their kids eat what they want, what they choose to eat, physical health must not be important.
Right. They just don't care at all. I think we've all heard all of those and more. And when people are just first diving into this.
Oh, yeah. I think it's so interesting to think about those. And I would love to hear, like in the comments below or whatever, like what rules come to mind for you. And even though we're giggling here, that's because we have spent lots of time processing through this, because this is a huge conventional wisdom piece. And it comes down to that last one you were talking about, that, we must not care about our kids' health. But no, it's a different way of thinking about it. And I think we're going to bring that same kind of analysis that we bring to all our Unschooling Rules episodes, in that, you know what? People really are so very different. People's bodies function so very different. And when we can start to look through that lens and just have conversations with each other, we can start to just pick that apart, peel back those layers around, because people are different. I mean, it's not hard to get someone to say yes to that right off the bat, but the depth to that is incredible. Like, it applies to everything from relationships to food to sleep to how we like to engage with the world to, just how we react to constraints. Like, everything is wrapped up in how people are different. And so when we can hold together that, oh my gosh, this feels good to me. So we're talking about food. So eating this way feels good to me. My body feels really good. we can hold that completely. That is our truth. And yet also to be able to hold that, and also I don't need to tell everybody else, my partner, my best friend, my children, that, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so good eating this way. You should do this too. Right? Because we're sharing. It's like, when you first get to unschooling, you go, oh my gosh, everybody should unschool. Right? Because it's working really well. I'm really excited about it. To be able to hold that unschooling is really exciting. This way of eating is really exciting and working really well for me. And yet, it may be different for other people. It may be different for other families. To be able to hold those together, for me, that's kind of the first step, because then once you get to that point, then you're actually can shift to being open and curious and learning about our kids and food and, how it feels to them and supporting them in their choices. It's like journeying alongside them, I think, right? And the funny is that, my kids didn't have too much weight to around food. Like, I didn't find unschooling until they were a little bit older, and this idea, but I wasn't overly judgmental about food even when they were younger. But to realize that, oh, I can also discard a lot of the weight that I've been carrying around about the messages that I grew up with and that I was getting from society in general. I was kind of like a newbie on this journey alongside them. So I was exploring food and was exploring food, learning what felt good, all those pieces. And I jumped to, like we were talking about in the last episode, and it changes over time. And I learn more. It's not something where I'm looking for the answer. And this is the way I want to eat forever. And then judging myself if I eat in a different way, etc., or change something up. It's more about understanding ourselves and figuring out what's working for us and exploring and playing and like just having all those interesting things. Like ice cream for breakfast is not going to hurt anyone. Ice cream for breakfast for a week, for a month, is not going to hurt. But it's exploring that and having the conversations. That's where the learning is, in the conversations. And if there's judgment, people don't want to have conversations with you. It's like, oh my gosh, you did what? Oh, you must feel horrible. Somebody said that to me. I don't want to have a conversation with them about it, right?
Right. And I think that's the piece that I want to talk about, because you kind of said like, oh, keep it to yourself. And I don't think that's exactly what you meant, but that's not how we did it. Like, I did share my journey with food because I had some really healthy messages given to me as a child. And so this journey with food has been a long, long one for me to figure out my body, how I want to move, what fuels it, what feels good, all of those pieces. And I am very open with that. The difference is I don't think at all that it would necessarily apply to anyone else. But what I think is valuable about the conversations, like when I'm talking about, because in my family, with my kids and my husband, we always talk about food and what feels good to us and what, how we want to do things, because I think the conversation's interesting because it does give us this mind of like, oh, okay, yeah, what does feel good for me? How does this feel? What do I feel about this? Like, we're able to have conversations because for me, it was such a valuable piece of my path that I didn't want to keep it from them because I think that's where we can go to the hands off, right? We can go to like, okay, they're just don't give them any information at all. And I just really am a believer that people want information. And what I saw with my kids is that they eat very differently. I mean, one will never eat fruit still to this day. One loves fruit and this one loves vegetables and this one loves this. And it's so different how they do it. There was no judgment about that. Like, it was just like, does this feel good to you? Does this and a lot of it was textures and a lot of it was, about energy. And I loved, and this was in a previous episode where, Erica, you were talking about how Candy felt different in, Maya's body at different times. Like, she craved it and wanted it. And I'm thinking, wow, think of how she's growing and the energy she needed to do things. And Candy and sugar's a fast energy. So like those kind of conversations I think are interesting. And so I think for people, it's not about not sharing information. It's about keeping that judgment out of it.
Yeah. And if I implied it's not, when I was talking about journeying alongside each other, I meant in conversation and sharing our journey and telling each other, oh, like I'm really craving this, or I'm really interested in this, and I want to explore this and how it felt. Yes, absolutely. That is what I was trying to get to when I talked about journeying alongside each other together, because that is so much of what's come out of all these unschooling rules episodes, and specifically that self-regulation one that our last episode that we were talking about. Like, it's in the conversations, it's in being together where we all learn pieces, right? Where we can process and bounce ideas off each other and just really dig into it and be curious without the judgment piece. But information is awesome. And what I think it helps too, that, I noticed in my kids, something that was, I found different as they grew up with their peers so much, was that the people are different idea was really like the lens through which they saw the world and their friends. There weren't those judgment pieces. There weren't the expectations that other people were doing it the right way, the one way, because that's the way they grew up. Like, how you do things is okay, and that's working well for you, and that's really cool. And somebody else is making different choices, and that is just as cool, right? There's no judgment as to one better than the other. And to be able to even just take that idea with you as you move out into the world, and how you relate to friends and all those different pieces, that has been something that has stood out for me over time.
Yeah. When I'm looking at these, beliefs, it's these cultural messages that have been ingrained for our whole lives. And so it makes sense that these are challenging, when we first come to unschooling, especially, and as our kids go through seasons of eating different things, and it looks different than what our beliefs are telling us it should look like. I wanted to go back to the one about if kids can eat whatever they choose, that they'll only choose, ice cream or chips or candy or something like that. And so I feel like this one is such a popular belief because so many people are going from really extreme controlling of food. And so if that has been your culture in your family up until this point, and then you decide, now my kids can choose, they're gonna choose the things that they didn't have access to before. That's just human nature. And so I feel like, in a way, yes, this happens. It happens for a while. It happens until they really do have choice, and then also, right, like with my example with Maya and the candy, there are seasons to it as well. And so I do think it's interesting and kind of important to notice, like, what are you coming from? What are your kids' internalized beliefs about food? Do they think they really have a choice? How limited have they been in the past? And then really look at that. It seems like they only want to eat ice cream moment for what it is, which is a human being who wants to choose the thing that they have never been allowed to have before.
I do like that, because that is such a valuable lens, because there, especially when restrictions are being released, it's not so much about the choice that they're making. It's the fact that they have the choice.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, now I can choose this thing. Can I still choose this thing an hour from now? Can I still choose this thing tomorrow? They are going to keep choosing that, or don't be surprised if they choose to keep choosing that until it really feels like a choice that they have, and that it will maybe not be taken away from them. If I choose it one more time, will you finally decide that we're going to put restrictions back in place? And it works with food, and it works with tech use, and it just works with anything that is previously restricted, because it's human nature. I think, when something's been restricted, I can do this
and
now.
to test it, because kids want to make sense of things, right? So they're going to test that. Okay, where is the limit? Ice cream for a month, is that the limit? Is it, every meal that, is that the limit? And so, but what I don't know, something that just keeps popping up to me as we're talking, I really think the release of judgment is probably the most important piece, because we can think about all different aspects. So it's like the particular food, it's the time they eat, the whatever. But I'm also thinking, so I was what was called the picky eater, so I had a very limited diet when I was younger. It involved a lot of potatoes in all forms. And, I think there were times my parents worried about like how restricted, but they really never said anything about it or whatever. And, it was, what's interesting now is as an adult, I understand looking back that it was certain textures, it was certain things that just didn't work for me. And now I have this incredibly varied diet of things that I love, like I know different things that I didn't have access to when I was a kid. And so I think it's just not about judging, because I think I've seen families like, you have to try everything on your plate. You have to do, this. I want you to be this well-rounded eater. But back to people are different. We don't know how that food is being experienced, spicy versus not spicy, textures, salty versus sweet. Like we don't know what that even feels like to another person. And so I think that trust and just letting go of that judgment, we just learn so much more. I feel like my parents probably could have done that. Like, I don't think they shamed me about my eating, but I don't think they also asked a lot of questions where I probably could have said, I just think mushrooms are gross, and so I don't want to eat that thing that's smothered in mushrooms. But, we didn't have those conversations, but I feel like I did with my girls, and that we would talk about like, what is it you don't like about fruit? Okay, this is what, and then we could figure out different things. I don't know. I think that letting go of the judgment and that curiosity, it's the learning.
Yeah, the letting go of judgment is not easy because of the culture, just how deeply ingrained it gets. And so I think that is like a really big part of the journey, is just intentionally trying to release that, learning new and different things about food that you didn't realize before, learning things about, child development, and trusting that you cannot know someone else's internal experience. And so we really just have to believe people when they say it doesn't work for them for whatever reason, whether it's just it makes them feel more comforted to eat foods like that, or it's a texture thing, like you're saying. I mean, there can be so many reasons. And when kids are young, they won't even be able to describe necessarily what it is that, how it's bothering them. Maybe it's even making them feel sick. They just can't even describe what that is. And so, for something like food, it's a shame that there are such kind of strong beliefs about what is right and what is good, because that can distract us from really listening to the only person who knows what experience is like, which is the person who's eating the food.
Right. And not to be dramatic, but I think that can lead to disordered eating, in that we're not listening to what working for us. We're either, being influenced by this outside voice or being shamed about what we're eating. And so it just disconnects us from what actually works for ourselves.
Yeah. And I think for me, when I was starting to feel, that worry rise or things like, for me, it wasn't about stuffing that down or saying, oh, I'm an unschooler, I shouldn't worry about that stuff. But for me, it was more information like, oh, what are other possibilities? I came across intuitive eating, the idea of that, the concept of that, as I was looking into, looking into diets, this is the best way, to eat, etc. When I could get more information, that really helped me see that, oh yeah, this is the conventional story that I am hearing regularly, but there are other stories and other things are working for other people that open things up. And that helped me, because when I think about all the many, many different pieces of our food journey, which, included being vegetarian for many, many years and included type 1 diabetes and, all these different pieces and textures, likes, dislikes, all those things just alongside. for me, what really helped me move through those, I think looking back, was just coming at it with a lens of abundance versus scarcity, right? That lens of abundance. If somebody had a texture thing, it's like, oh, that's really curious. And thinking about other things, maybe with that same texture or without that texture, or, so it was always about bringing more possibilities in when they were, if they were feeling that they didn't like certain things. Like I didn't want them thinking, okay, yeah, sure, I don't want to make you eat that. I'm not going to make you eat that, but we got a peanut butter sandwich here for you. That's your other choice. So to have that abundance really just helped us play so much more and be so much more relaxed around.
Yeah, it's so funny how like our brains are so similar in that way, like, because that's abundance was exactly what came to mind for me in kind of a different angle, because so I like, for me, food is medicine. Like it is, I don't really participate in Western medicine. And so the food I eat is important to me. And it was important. And it was something that we talked about in my family, but it was with that lens of abundance. And that makes all the difference because there was never anyone feeling like they didn't have the sweet they wanted, the salt they wanted, the variety they wanted, the everything they wanted. We would just find a way. And so I think that feeling of abundance, like what, so, if you're, I think it can be so unique to every family. So again, there's not one way for this to look. So I hope everybody's getting that. Like there's not one way. There's a variety of ways for that people are going to eat and it's going to look. But what I would say is just how does the energy feel? Like, I feel like that might be a more helpful lens too than like the specifics of, they're eating ice cream every day for breakfast, or they're never eating ice cream, or they're never having soda, or whatever the thing is. How's the energy? Because what I know from my family, and some people find this hard to believe, but you can ask my kids, they're old, they've been there a long time. The energy around food was just, we love food. Like, let's find good, amazing food and enjoy it. And so it just had a feel of, we can have all kinds of amazing food that we love. And there was never a scarcity. And I think that checking that energy, and if you, and I would say that's not what I felt growing up, because there was some shame around eating and some, oh, don't eat. And I mean, plus my mom just turned 90. She still talks about her weight and the thing and the whatever. So like I grew up with that, and that's what I didn't want. Like, it wasn't about the specific foods. It's like, I just wanted an energy of, we can eat delicious foods and feel good and love our bodies and know our bodies. And anyway,
I'm thinking about so like as my kids got bigger, it seemed like they kind of narrowed in on like these are the few things that we want to eat right now. And it gets a little bit frustrating for me when I know all the abundant foods in the world and they're just doing this narrowing. But I think, it's probably just a phase of growth too. But one thing that really helped us was to start, one of the first things was food TikTokers. So like to see people quickly making foods. Oliver started showing me, doesn't this look amazing? And then we could make it, things like that. We got one of those recipe boxes deliveries, where you pick out the recipes and then they send you the food. So we tried that for a little while just to kind of mix things up. And both kids they liked seeing the photo of the food and it had a name to it. And, it's just a little different, a little more like, oh, we're at a restaurant, or, like, oh, this is something that has been designed to be really delicious or whatever. And so things like that have helped us too, just kind of expand what's possible or what they're interested in. It's cute to watch them grow up. Like I'm having the best time with it. But recently Oliver just said, I was so hungry and Daddy gave me leftovers and there was a lot of beans and rice and I just ate it all. I don't know if he had ever even tried it before, but in this new growing phase, he's just like, I need some food. And so he's just much more willing to try anything. And so he's like, and I think I really like it. I've been thinking about beans and rice a lot lately. And so stuff like that, like rather than when he's little, me saying, this is good for you, I want you to eat beans and rice, you have to try some beans, just if that had been the path, I just feel like the experience would be so different, and he wouldn't have that kind of realization and the ownership and the like deciding for himself that like, okay, this is a food that's now on my list of foods I like. And so yeah, it's really fun.
I think too, even as they're narrowing in the huge differences, it is even with that abundance mindset, in that they know it's a choice, right? It's not because these are my only options. It's not the scarcity mindset of it. It's the abundance of all the things that I could choose. These are the 5.
This is what I want. Yeah.
For the next 6 months or however ever long. But yeah, it's just a completely different energy, as Anna was talking about. When you think, just consider the energy, around food. And that I think will be a great guide as you're starting to play with things. And just with older kids now, that was reminding me, because as your kids were playing with, the food meal boxes and all the different things, I see right now too, that playful attitude is also transferring and helping with them now cooking their own food. Like, they have made food along the way, and just over the years, as they have taken that on more and more, that playful, open, abundant kind of attitude has also helped them as they've been transitioning to, adult lives or whatever, as they're taking on more of the food prep as well for themselves. So, it comes with that whole mindset, I think, the whole ethos of them growing up, where, we can figure things out. We can play with things. There's no judgment of one thing as better than the other. There's lots of conversations about, so like they even check in with how they're okay with saying, ew, I didn't like that. Next time when I make it, I'm going to do this, or, and we're okay with asking, how did you like that? If we made something, and getting feedback from them, that it's not judgmental or you did something wrong, but it's like for that person's taste, because people's taste for salt, people's taste for spices, do not give me cilantro, all those pieces are really how people are different. And we can bring that in. And I think, what? That just made me think, so many of our, like, as we started unschooling, that first year or two, where we ended up with food for a very long time, and I would say even still now, was that our meals became more kind of like, we would just put out different things. We wouldn't mix everything together and here's your one meal, or we wouldn't make plates for each other. I would put out a variety of things and be sure that there was something that, that there were other things for the vegetarian, for Lissy to have, that weren't meat-based. And, somebody doesn't like this, but somebody else really loves this. We're going to have this, but we're going to have something else. So it's not like I'm making 3 different meals. It's like when I'm coming up with a meal, I've got like 3 or 4 different pieces to it, but I keep them separate so people can pick and choose what they want. And then they can add more things that they know are around the kitchen, etc. But to put it more potluckish,
right.
So that people still had the choices right then and there as to what they felt like eating out of a few options that were there, really helped with the not bringing judgment to it, because there were options. It really helped with the people are different. And yeah, your sibling grabbed this thing and you grabbed this thing, and oh geez, everybody went for that. We'll make more of that next time. It just really, again, helps the energy be more open and playful around the whole kind of food experience, I think.
Yeah, I've talked on the network before about those adaptable meals, where it was like, okay, we can take this sauce off, add onions separately. But again, with no weight about it, it's just like, yeah, we all like different things, and they see me grabbing different things than David grabs, and they grab different things. And so I love that. And there was also, we tended to do that type of adaptable meals for dinner. For lunch, sometimes it was completely different. This one wanted this, and I'm making this thing. And then, they want this, and they want to heat this up from yesterday. And so it's, again, I just didn't want any weight around it. I just wanted it to be like, it's, we eat because we enjoy eating and it fuels our body, and it doesn't have to have the weight that it can have that I've had to shed for a long time.
I'm just thinking, like, to be able to have a childhood where it's okay to say that you don't like a food, that in itself is like such an amazing gift, I feel like. Because I mean, I get it, because the adults are the ones who are buying the groceries, trying to figure out what works, preparing the food, and so it can be hard to hear, this doesn't taste good to me. But if we are kind of open and curious, really focusing on learning about the different people in our family, then it's really good information, and they're learning about themselves, and they're feeling comfortable enough to share with us what they're learning about themselves. And then, the next time we have a chance to make it even better. And so I just think that's amazing. And I also wanted to mention just, like the seasons in our own lives, there's not, just like we were talking about with the, the expectations of this self-regulation, like there is not an end point you will get to in your life where we figured out the diet that works, period, because our bodies change over time. Their bodies are growing and changing over time. And so, like, just to kind of view it in this kind of long game, this food journey, that we're all individually on, I feel like it's much more expansive. It's much more abundant. It's much less judgmental. It's so much more about just right now, in how my body is right now, what is working well for me, and not extending that to what is going to work well for anyone else. And I don't know, it helps me and my family avoid so much kind of arguments and conflict and everything if we all are really free to be where we are with our eating.
Okay, I want to grab from what both of you were just talking about, because I love that, bigger picture, longer seasons, things change over time. And tying that to you talking, Anna, about, I just make like this lunch and this lunch, because we did the same thing, like kind of breakfast and lunch. We're just kind of, what would you like? What would you like? Right. And so when you take that lens of the big picture and you put it to your day, time also doesn't need to control it, right? So the reason breakfast and lunches were just kind of what would you like and grabbing you something was because they weren't often all hungry at the same time. right. I was hungry at the same time that they were hungry. Like I was hungry when I first got up, so I ate something. And then when they got up, some were hungry immediately, some wanted to eat later. And then even though I made like that adaptable meal dinner, there was also not specifically a time component that said, okay, now you need to stop what you're doing and come. Now, I would definitely go around, like we'd have conversation. Oh, I wish I knew that dinner was ready because I like to eat it hot or whatever. So I would always walk around and say, hey, food's ready when you're hungry. Food's ready if you can take a break. And to this day, I still go to my husband. Food's ready. I'm going to eat now. He always comes and joins me, unless the odd time, if there's something that he's right in the middle of doing, etc. But I mean, so often they did all come within 5-10 minutes, but it wasn't an expectation. If the odd time they were busy with something, totally. If they were super busy with something, they said right away, I can't come. It's like, want me to make a plate and bring it to you? Do you want this, this, and this? My guess out of what was there that they not like. So yeah, that whole long-term seasonal changes with food. Also, that time component, like really within your day too, right? That it can be the timing of when people are hungry and what they might be fancying can be very different. And we can adapt with that as well. I thought that was really cool to think about.
Yeah, that's that intuitive. Like it can't really be intuitive eating if we have to eat at a certain time, And so, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I do too. But I think it's good in terms of this rules episode to think that some people think that unschoolers never eat together. that it's never, and we actually did, I would say 80% of the time had our dinner together at a table. But it was kind of like you're saying, I would just check in. If they were in busy with something, no big deal. We eat, I bring a plate up, something else. But so often it was just a time we enjoyed being together and doing it, but it never had that weight. So again, I feel like so many of these things are, what's the energy like? Is it creating conflict? Like you were talking about, you don't have that conflict because they're able to say, I don't like this. This doesn't work. And so what's the energy like around those meals? Because, a forced family dinner, ugh, like that doesn't feel good, And so I think it's just kind of keeping all that in mind, but it's going to look different in each family.
Yeah, just to jump off that for a quick hot minute. The idea of the family dinners, like that is another conventional idea that, oh yes, you must, bring your family together for a meal, right? And put the devices away and like all those pieces. And absolutely that comes from a very well-meaning place because, parents are off at work, kids are off at school. You don't have time to be together, to engage with each other, to talk, because then you're doing homework and then you're doing go to bed routine, like all those pieces. It is kind of the one time of the day when everybody can talk to each other. Yet when you just take a moment to say, but we're not living that lifestyle. We are at home together. We can choose to talk to each other when something comes up, when we connect, when we go in and check in on them, when they come out to share something interesting. Like we are connecting at various points all throughout the day. So there isn't that focus on this is the one time when we can talk to each other. So we must sit down and eat together. So it's not about saying that that's wrong. It's about saying, oh, that doesn't fit with the lifestyle that we have. We don't need that tool to maintain connection and relationship with our kids, right?
Yeah. And so then it becomes about the choice, right? And so then it's like, maybe sometimes that still works. And so from the outside, maybe it looks like, oh, they have this conventional dinner, but when in fact, it's not at all that, it really is just like we have the choice and this is what's working for this season or for this time, And so I love that. Again, just looking at those cultural pieces, are they serving your family? Are they making things better, or is it creating this rub or this weight or something that you're carrying around that's making you feel bad?
Yeah, I'm giggling because I'm just thinking about our family dinners, which don't usually happen family style, but it's so funny. Like, so Oliver is gigantic and eats super fast so he can get back to what he's doing. He's always very busy. And so we just all know if he comes to the table, he eats, it takes about 5 seconds and he's gone. That's what it feels like. Maya takes her time, but she loves to eat alone. And so the only real chance for us all to eat together is for us to have some meal that we all like, which that alone is kind of unusual. So we have this food we all like. We have to not tell Oliver to get to the table until, you know what I mean? Like we have to plan it just right. Get Maya to the table. Don't tell Oliver yet. We get up there, Josh and I sit down. Oliver, food's ready. So Josh will be like, look, we're all eating together. And it's like this little snapshot moment, but it's funny and right. Like we just have so much time together that there's no weight on that happening. It's just this funny, like little lightning moment of we were all eating together and then it's over again.
I love that. Okay, so this was really fun. I think we're never going to cover all that needs to be covered about food because it's evolving and people bring different things to it. And then that kind of reminds me, like, join us in the network because we've had some amazing talks about food. We've had snack plate pictures and all the different creative ways people bring food into their life. Parents that are struggling to even make food and talking about that. So I love that community aspect of people that are kind of blowing the lid off and looking at it differently, being able to share insights and really have just beautiful conversations that don't have the weight of those cultural expectations. So join us at the Living Joyfully Network. That would be a lot of fun. But I really appreciate you both and just all of this fun conversation about food and the rules that may not be serving us.
Thanks so much.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.